Welcome to the Jeremiah Show. My special guest today is Laurence Juber. He's a Grammy winning, world renowned guitar virtuoso. He played lead guitar in Paul McCartney's rock band Wings from 1978 to 1981. Laurence has gone on to establish himself as a world renowned guitar virtuoso and a session player. He can be heard on recordings from artists as diverse as Harry Styles, Dan Hicks, and the Hot Licks, and Seal. God, I love every one of those bands. Laurence was born in Stepney, East London, and he was raised and he went to school in North London. Beginning his career on a cheap acoustic guitar, he learned to read music early, and the system of music notation came fairly quickly to him. He began to earn money playing the guitar at 13. That's about when you need money, right? Right around 13. Either that or to impress the ladies. At 15, he began to study classical guitar. Laurence set his sights on becoming a professional session musician. And in college, he played with the National Youth Jazz Orchestra. And upon graduation, he immediately began to work as a session guitarist. Amazingly, his first project was working with former Beatles producer George Martin on an album for Cleo Lane. During this time, he also worked on the 1977 James Bond film, The Spy Who Loved Me. That might be my favorite. Laurence gave up his lucrative career and very successful at that time, obviously, when he was invited to join his boyhood hero, Paul McCartney, and Paul McCartney's band, Wings. This is in 1978. And 2 years later, in 1980, he garnered his first Grammy Award with the Wings track, Rockestra Theme, which won the award for Best Rock Instrumental. He earned a second Grammy for Best Pop Instrumental for his solo guitar arrangement of the Pink Panther theme on the CD Henry Mancini Pink Panther, or Pink Guitar, excuse me. Laurence's first solo album was Standard Time, which he began recording while he was with Wings, and it was released in 1982. He subsequently resumed work as a studio musician and played guitar for numerous television shows, including Happy Days, Family Ties, Home Improvement, and Seventh Heaven. Meanwhile, Laurence Juber's credentials and reputation as a top-tier fingerstyle guitarist continued to grow. He was voted Guitarist of the Year by the readers of Fingerstyle Guitar magazine and was named one of the top acoustic players of all time by Acoustic Guitar magazine. He's released many critically acclaimed solo albums, and he also has a series of instrumental CDs that teach basic music theory and arrangement techniques for guitarists. Welcome, Laurence Juber.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Good to see you, my friend. So you're here to talk about your latest album, A Day in My Life. And, for the listeners, it's a collection of a dozen of Laurence's Beatles arrangements recorded in London's famed Abbey Road Studio 2. I've been listening to it all day. In fact, I just turned it off and I turned on the microphone. I even had a play when Laurence popped in. I just got to say real quickly, my favorite thing right now, and this started when you were on the Mike Gormley show and I listened to this album, Laurence, it kind of like sparked this a passion or something for acoustic guitar. Reminded me when I was a kid, my parents used to listen to the Windham Hill collections and guitar, and it just kind of took me back. And so every morning now I've swapped out my jazz and my coffee cup of coffee and my jazz music for your acoustic guitar. There's some really great playlists Lawrence is on Spotify, and all of your albums, it looks like, are up there. So I recommend the listeners, you're going to love this music, and you can find it there on Spotify and follow, and just explore the catalog that you've got there, Laurence.
Well, pretty soon you'll be able to drink my own coffee blend,
Oh, really?
the acoustic coffee
Is
company.
this breaking news?
This is breaking news. Yeah.
Oh,
But you know, the thing is that when I started doing fingerstyle guitar, and this really goes back to when I was a teenager. You know, when I was, I guess, 13 years old, and there was a tune called Angie, which was written by Davy Graham, which Paul Simon recorded. And it had this kind of like thing where there's a descending bass line and you have a melody on top. And if you could do the same, like do both at the same time, that was kind of a rite of passage, because it was, you had to really, kind of figure it out. And I did. And it really kind of like launched me into having a love for fingerstyle guitar. But what we refer to in England as fingerstyle guitar, because in America it tends to be more focused on the kind of the Chet Atkins tradition, which has its roots in Kentucky. And I don't really approach it from that point of view. My influences were more the English folk baroque, like Bert Jansch and John Renbourn. And after Wings, and I started, I moved to LA, I started doing session work in LA, and raising a family, and I didn't want to travel, and I started writing a lot of solo acoustic guitar music. And in 1990, I put out an album called Solo Flight, which was all original compositions. And that was really where I lived for most of the 90s, was doing original guitar stuff. And it was kind of, I caught the wave after the Windham Hill wave, because Windham Hill was kind of the 80s wave of
yeah, it was.
I was in the 90s wave. But then after I'd done a series of albums, my wife Hope said to me, you should really do an album of Beatle tunes. And my response to that was, well, I'm a composer, not really an arranger. So she said, yeah, but I want you to do it for me. And
you can't say no to that.
Say no to that.
You
So
shouldn't.
I said, okay, I'll do it, but I want you to produce it. So I didn't want to have the responsibility of producing as well as being the artist. So we started that with an album called LJ Plays the Beatles, and that developed into a series of 4 albums. LJ Plays the Beatles, LJ Plays the Beatles Volume 2, LJ Can't Stop Playing the Beatles, and the Fab Fourth. And August of last year, of 23, I was invited to Abbey Road to celebrate Billy J. Kramer's 80th birthday. And then to also, as part of his birthday celebration, to co-produce an album for him. And
so, can I interrupt? Is it like a party, or is it?
It was a party.
Explain what that means when you're invited to that.
We had a party.
Okay.
But then I booked a day, the day before that, I booked the day for myself in the studio. So I could record a dozen of my favorite Beatle arrangements. And doing it in, the shrine in that particular room was a very magical experience. Subsequently, we then spent the 2 days after his party recording an album, which actually comes out on June 7th. Which is the 60th anniversary of Billy J's debut on the Ed Sullivan Show. So that's kind of a special.
Wow.
And there's a single out called I Couldn't Have Done It Without You, which, I did a lot of the arranging on the album, and I'm quite pleased with the way that his single turned out. And, for a geezer of 80 years old, he's doing pretty well. But for me, it was like to get this balance between arranging for guitar and composing for guitar, and the dynamics that go into that, and the obsession that goes into that too, because I'm just completely obsessed with the instrument, and I have been since I picked it up in November of '63 on my 11th birthday.
Describe that obsession. What is it like for you? Do you have to have a guitar nearby and in your hands?
Well, I have one or two.
How many? Yeah, you've got. So Laurence is referring, if you want to watch this interview on YouTube, he has. I can't count them. I will count them before this interview is finished, but there's quite a few guitars right behind him.
That's
But
kind of the acoustic guitar component.
okay, that's an
The
obsession,
electric
I would
guitars are
say.
elsewhere.
That could be an obsession, or that could be
Well, I mean, yeah,
requirement
there
for
is
the
something.
career.
There is a syndrome called guitar acquisition syndrome,
Okay, tell me about that.
which I've managed to cure myself of pretty much.
Pretty
I
much.
have, well, part of it was with me, a number of the instruments that I have were various prototypes of my signature model with Martin guitars that went through various incarnations. So the obsession really is not only in terms of the tactile actually playing the instrument, but also wood and tone and what one can do with a guitar that isn't what you would expect you could do with a guitar. And part of that for me is using altered tunings. For example, I use DADGAD tuning a lot, D-A-D, G-A-D, which is where you tune the top two strings and the bottom string down a whole step. And that opens up almost like a pianistic range of voicings and textures that aren't always accessible in standard tuning. And so
When did
that's
you learn
become kind
that?
of a passion for me.
Yeah, is that something that's almost an acquired skill that takes many years to?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something you can necessarily really get into the depth of overnight, but it's part of my arranging process because I really consider myself, as much as I'm obsessed with the guitar, I consider myself to be a musician who plays the guitar. That because I've studied musicology, I've studied music theory, I've practiced all of that. And so the guitar really, it becomes a vehicle. Segovia described it as like having an orchestra in your lap. And for me, that's very much the case. But it's not just an orchestra, it's a big band, it's a rock band, it's a folk group, it's whatever is appropriate to the musical substance involved.
And at your skill level and at your stage in playing and mastering this instrument, it can be anything you want it to be, can't it?
Up to a point.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain things that you got to hire a violinist or a string quartet or whatever, because the sonority is doesn't always apply itself to everything. But the thing about it with an acoustic guitar is the self-sufficiency of it, that I don't need anybody else to make a complete musical statement.
Interesting. I've never thought of it that way. It's very interesting. Well, what did you call your lifelong obsession with the guitar and mastering the guitar? But what was the clinical title for purchasing too many guitars?
Oh, well, that's guitar acquisition syndrome.
Guitar acquisition
And
syndrome.
when when somebody has it if you say, well, what's your favorite guitar, and the answer is the next one.
The next one. Well, I promised our listeners that I would count how many guitars you have behind you. So I have done that. I have a number now. Would you like to know how many? So at this number 14, which is all that I can see you have 14 guitars in cases and behind you. So that guitar acquisitional
There's another one
syndrome,
over here.
is that where it stops at 14?
No,
There's another 15.
no, because that's most, other than the Rickenbacker 12 string in the corner, that's all acoustic guitars. And they're all different. I mean, going from the left to the right, it's a classical guitar. It's an old Gibson arch top. There's hidden behind that guitar case is an 1893 Martin parlor guitar. And
you're even hiding your guitars.
Well, because there's a gig bag sitting in front of it because I forgot to put it away. So
a gig bag. You said there's a Rittenhauer. Is it Rittenhauer in the corner?
No, Rickenbacker.
Rickenbacker
12, as in kind of George Harrison, Hard Day's Night.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Lee Rittenhauer.
Oh, Lee Ritenour's
who's
a whole other.
he's a whole another
Lee
guy. He's
Ritenour
coming
was
on the show
Lee
next
was an
week.
influence in the 70s
Oh, he was.
with Larry Carlton and the LA studio players. You know,
Well, I
the
wish I would have got him to come pop
record.
in and on this show with us because he's coming on next week.
Oh, well, give him my regards.
Okay, you'll have to do an interview with me and join me. I know you've done this. Just humor me, please, because it's where my mind goes when I think of you and your youth. I know you've probably answered these questions a million different ways, a million different times over the years, but will you humor me and let me take you back to 13, 15, just for a moment, and then up to this new album? I've got to believe me, it'll make sense for the reason why I'm going back. So the again, let's just remind everybody the latest album. Stream it, pick it up, purchase it, go to Bandcamp. I think
Yeah, vinyl is on Amazon,
vinyl's on Amazon.
in your local purveyor of vinyl music.
And Lauren, do you make the most, you know, I'm always encouraging everybody that's listening because we've got such a big music fan base that love to support the artists. And I always send them to Bandcamp because I've heard through a lot of these independent artists that's where they make the largest amount, you know, versus streaming, or unless you sell it off your website. Is that
Actually,
true?
well, obviously selling your own merch,
Go straight to you is best.
but Bandcamp, although Bandcamp don't pay for streaming, they
Mhm.
do pay for downloads,
Just
and
the
you
down.
can sell merch through Bandcamp. Um, to be honest, I mean the place that you really want to get the airplay is on Sirius,
Yeah.
because Sirius is real radio, as opposed to the streaming environment, which pays very fractionally.
Right.
And so one either has to be in the billion stream club, to be able to
Hmm.
make real money. And my daughter Ilse, as a songwriter, it has 3 songs in the billion stream club, which
Oh
is
wow! Congratulations.
more than the
I'm
Beatles.
glad you brought her up because I was going to bring her up in the end there.
Later we can talk
Yeah.
about. But Sirius radio is actual radio, so
Right.
that's a whole different pay structure. But the fact is that in the streaming environment, I mean, the convenience is there, but to be honest, to listen to music on vinyl is a
Yeah. There's
very different
nothing.
experience from listening to a low bandwidth digital version of it in a streaming environment.
And you can't even describe that adequately, can you? You can't put that into words. You just have to hear it. The difference
It
between streaming
feels
and
different.
yeah.
And the fact is that what we do on I mean, I hesitate to say it's like a kind of a therapy in a way. I mean, because music can be very therapeutic. That the listening experience is just different. I mean, beyond the immersiveness of having to put the disc on the turntable,
Yeah.
read the liner notes, turn it over.
Hold that album cover.
Yeah, it's tactile
Yeah.
from that perspective, but you can't really do that in the car, for example. So that's where Sirius is useful in that kind of. I mean, not Sirius. Spotify is useful in that kind of environment. But it's
It's
interesting to
benefit.
find that in the different streamers, my Pandora versus my Spotify versus my Apple Music, each one is a different playlisting and focuses on different aspects of my 30 plus albums that I've put out over the last 25 years.
If I put on your very first album and I listened through your whole catalog, your 30 plus albums, and then all the various playlists that you probably appear on or other albums, how long would I be listening for? You ever calculated that out?
No, I haven't. I mean, well, you got to figure, if each album is like 40 minutes or so, I mean, what you're looking at,
It's a good week.
Yeah, more than 20 hours.
Yeah, that's a good week. Let's try. I'm going to try it. I'm going to take the challenge. I challenge all of you to do it as well. All right, let me take a real quick break. My special guest today is Laurence Juber. Are you joining us from LA today? Are you?
I'm in LA. Yeah, I'm in
LA. Okay.
Studio City, Los Angeles. Yeah.
All right. He's a Grammy-winning, world-renowned guitar virtuoso. He was voted Guitarist of the Year by readers at Fingerstyle Guitar magazine and a Guitar World. What a great place to, what a great establishment that you got this compliment from. A stunning sense of space and fluidity, a truly wondrous sound, says Guitar World of Laurence Juber and his new album. His latest album, it's A Day in My Life. It's a collection of a dozen of LJ's Beatles arrangements recorded in London's famed Abbey Road Studio #2. This is the famous recording studio where the Beatles recorded most of their music. A Day in My Life by Laurence Juber. It's available on CD from the LJ store and as a 180-gram vinyl LP from Amazon. It's also digitally streamed on all the platforms. You can go to laurencejuber.com, LaurenceJuber.com, and laurencejuber.bandcamp.com. What is a 180-gram vinyl? What is that, Laurence?
It's just a heavier vinyl, you know,
Okay.
and that's the weight that they used to use. I don't know if they still do in England, because English vinyl was always heavier than American vinyl.
And does that create a deeper sound, do you think? What does that do for
I
the
don't know that
sound?
it makes that much difference sonically. But it's a more robust disc.
Yeah,
So
it's
I mean,
it's retro.
I mean, this particular album and the last vinyl album I did is direct metal mastered. So it cuts out one step in the manufacturing process, which gives you a purer sound. And we also, this was mastered from the high resolution digital files. So it's, you know, by comparison with, let's say, an MP3, I mean, it's significantly better sonic picture. So the sense of space is very much more enhanced when you go up into the higher sample rates. And going from a high sample rate into an analog format is a, you know, you're maintaining a lot of the girth, as it were.
And as you said, it's better. So don't you just want better? So go get it. I'm going to give you some homework. I never liked homework. Just to let everybody know, I don't like homework, but I like fun homework. So here's fun homework. It's the only thing you're going to get here on the Jeremiah Show. Fun homework. I want you to go to Laurence Juber on your iPhone or your phone or your wherever you're at, your internet. Go to laurencejuber.com and hit the socials, follow him, stream him, go to Amazon and get that 180-gram vinyl. You want better. You want more robust. And we'll be right back.